This program, of course, is presented by Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the most widely read, widely sold, and respected wrestling magazine in the world today.
This is a Pro Wrestling Illustrated podcast. I'm your host, PWI senior writer Al Castle, joined once again by my co-host, Brian Solomon. How's it going?
Happy to be here with you as always, Al.
Yes. Always enjoy talking wrestling with Brian, and plenty to talk about today, coming off of Backlash, a pay-per-view that I think was pretty well received by fans, and also looking ahead to AEW's Double or Nothing pay-per-view, one of the bigger ones on their calendar, and everything in between. Later on, going to hear an interview conducted by our own Candace Cordelia with a couple of stars from MLW. We don't talk too much MLW here, but they got a big show coming up this weekend in Philadelphia. It is their Kings of Colosseum event, and in the main event, the champion, Alexander Hammerstone, is defending his title against Richard Holliday. We're going to be talking to Richard and Alicia Atout here. Candace got to chat with them recently, talking about the big match coming up and a lot more. So stay tuned to hear from MLW's Clout Couple. Real quick, let's touch on usually this is where we do plugs, Brian, but I think more than plugs, we got to do some apologies. There have been a lot of issues on our publication side. Our print subscribers probably been waiting by that mailbox for a long time for a couple of issues now. We had some issues with our, I think it was a database error, and looking to correct it. As I understand it, it's largely has been corrected, and now it's just kind of a matter of playing catch up. So as I understand it, the May issue should be out to all print subscribers. If you haven't gotten your mailbox, it should be there soon, and pretty soon after that, I think it's our June issue, is going to be going out. So again, we apologize. We certainly appreciate your patience. I know Kevin's looking to make good with all our print subscribers. More details on that on our website, pwi-online.com. But I know it involves some access to our digital editions, and I think looking to make folks whole also with the print edition. So just head over to pwi-online.com and you get more details about what we're doing and all things Pro Wrestling Illustrated over at pwi-online.com. All right, Brian. So where do we begin? A Backlash again, not
Yes.
kind of an earth-shattering pay-per-view. And when you think about really since the beginning of the year, we went from the Rumble, which was a big stadium show. Then they went over to Saudi Arabia for another big stadium show, then WrestleMania. So it's been a while since we had sort of like a maintenance WWE pay-per-view, and that's kind of what this was. Lots of rematches from WrestleMania, which I kind of like that as kind of a theme. I mean, certainly WrestleMania is big enough that you got plenty of gas still left to extend those feuds at least another pay-per-view or two. So again, with a couple of exceptions, it was almost all WrestleMania rematches. And then I think a few cases better than the WrestleMania match. I think that certainly that was the case with Charlotte and
Yes.
Ronda. But overall, what was your take on WrestleMania Backlash?
Well, I think that the idea of Backlash should be, and originally was anyway, that it's the fallout from WrestleMania. It's like the after effects. So of course you're going to have a lot of rematches in there, and rematches are fine. I mean, if they're built well and if the original match is left open-ended, especially, where I stand on this kind of thing, because I've talked about it before, where it's like, look, I don't need every show to change my life and be this 5-star thing. In fact, I don't think it should be that, because that's how you burn your fans out.
Yeah.
All I'm looking for is a good, entertaining wrestling show, and once in a while one that is an all-time great show. But this was a good, entertaining show, and I think that partly maybe because of low expectations, I guess, I just came away from it really, enjoying it and thinking that it was definitely more engaging than I thought it was going to be. Like you said, the the Ronda Rousey and Charlotte Flair match for me was the match of the night. I thought it was the best match of the night and the best thing that Ronda has done since she's been back. It really worked. It's a little weird to me why they didn't do that finish at WrestleMania. It seems like it would have been the place to do it, with a star of that magnitude. But regardless, on its own merit, it was a great match. And overall, I thought a good show.
Yeah, I think with that match, if you did do that finish at WrestleMania, I guess you could still extend the feud another month, but it wouldn't be the same as kind of having Ronda on the chase. So I think in retrospect, it all worked out. It doesn't forgive kind of a mediocre match at WrestleMania, even with Charlotte winning and having kind of a match with no stipulations. It still could have been a better match at WrestleMania. We talked about it. I don't know. I think that has partially to do with just the layout of the match and the execution, but I think a lot of it was also kind of the crowd at WrestleMania. I thought this match suited both their strengths. I mean, the whole kind of I quit stipulation really played to what Ronda does best. And I think it was the best performance I've seen out of both women in a while. I mean, you almost forgot that they were capable of something like that, because both the characters have been kind of flat for a while. And with Ronda being out of the ring for 2 years, you kind of forgot that back in whatever it was, 2018, she was fantastic. I mean, she was really, really great and had that grit, that energy, that kind of fierce persona that really carried her through a lot of it. And we absolutely saw that in that match. And it all works out. Looks like Charlotte's taking some time off. I think that's probably a good idea, too. I think the fans and her kind of benefit from kind of taking a break from each other. And maybe it also kind of clears the path for some new contenders, some new storylines. So I think that's a good all around. Cody and Seth Rollins, another chapter in that feud, another terrific match, and it looks like it's not over. I'm thinking, we'll talk about this in a moment, but it sounds like Roman is not going to be in the next pay-per-view. So I'm thinking we might see Cody and Seth in the main event of the pay-per-view.
Which is great, I think.
Yeah, I'm all for that. What you run into, though, and I'm curious what you think about this, is clearly they're looking to protect Cody. If he's not going to be the top guy, he's going to be in that top two. He already is. I mean, as far as like all the branding and everything. But how many times can you have him beat Seth Rollins clean? I mean, do you have any concern about that?
Well, he didn't beat him clean the second time. I mean, that's what kind of keeps the feud going, though. The way they did it there was very clever, where you have Seth try to – it was like your classic, babyface routine. You have Seth try to grab the tights and steal a pin, and he fails. And then Cody says, you know what, I'm going to give you a taste of your own medicine. And he wins that way. I mean, it does kind of that's what opened the door, I think, to the third match. But like you said, especially when they've all been televised, the idea of a rubber match when somebody's already won the first two is not typically how it's done. But I'm also wondering. We've talked about maybe they might be thinking of Roman and Cody at SummerSlam, and if they are, the next pay-per-view might be the place to start the build. And maybe they start the build. I know this sounds crazy, but if Roman costs him the match somehow, if he actually loses to Seth, but loses in a way that still keeps him very, very strong, because you can clearly tell that it was Roman's involvement 100% that cost him the match. Like maybe he knocks him unconscious or something. I mean, they could go that route.
Yeah. So you think Cody can lose? And I think so, too. I mean, I do think
it just depends how. He should not be losing cleanly for sure. No way.
Right. But you also kind of book yourself into a jam if you've got another guy who's like so protected that he can't lose a match. So it's not that I'm in any rush to have Cody lose, but I do think you want to establish that this is a guy who can lose. I mean, it sort of adds some intrigue to the different feuds he'd be in. And another part of the story that I think maybe sort of underreported is how great Seth Rollins has been. You know, when you look at his babyface world title run a few years ago, and how, you know, I don't know if sabotage is the right word, but the way it ended, the feud with The Fiend, which was just, you know, if ever one match did just catastrophic damage to two wrestlers' careers, it was Seth Rollins and The Fiend in Hell in a Cell. And he never recovered as a babyface. And then really for the next couple of years, it was like we saw him almost trying to figure out this character in real time in front of the audience. And, you know, I bring up a lot him plucking Rey Mysterio's eye out. And to me, that was like still kind of trying to figure out what this was. And it wasn't really working. But he's landed on something that is really over. I think like he's really kind of fit into that character. It feels sort of fully formed. You know, it takes a little bit of that Messiah cult leader thing that he was that goes back to that Rey Mysterio feud, but has a little bit of sort of comedy elements. So he's a little deranged, a little bit of the Joker. And I think it really works. And you see him come out and the crowd sings along. And in the ring, it's funny because I still think of, you know, remember interviewing, you know, Ring of Honor up-and-comer Tyler Black. Mm-hmm. And he's a veteran now. And he is just a master worker in that ring. I think in some ways we're getting the best Seth Rollins we've ever seen before.
Yeah, and not only that, but I said this when I was watching the show with some friends, how he's in a very important spot right now where they have him with Cody. It's a crucial position because the problem with Cody is, or at least in their minds, they do not want to have happen what happened to him in AEW, where people turn on him and get sick of him and his like white meat babyface routine just kind of flops. Like there has to be, I mean, I'm assuming there has to be some paranoia about that and concern. And I think that is also the reason why they have this program with Seth Rollins going so long, because Seth, they know, is somebody that can help get him where he needs to be. Like, the crowd is not going to jump to Seth Rollins' side. That's not going to happen. You know, that's like, you know, it's like having, you know, you have Cody in there with somebody that you know the audience is going to be on Cody's side because the other guy is just so obnoxious and so good at what he does. And I think they're letting this play out to let Cody get over as strong as he possibly can before he moves on to something else. So, I mean, that also says a lot about how they value Seth and his role in the company, you know?
Yeah. I'm kind of having a realization sort of like mid-conversation here in between, you know, Cody as a new top babyface act, Seth doing great work as a heel, Ronda kind of like getting in her groove. You got Bianca as the other champ, and you know, we love Bianca Belair. You got Roman Reigns doing some of the best work I've seen in a long time. Is WWE really good right now? It sort of feels like it. I mean, I think there's a lot more to praise than to kind of tear down. And there's always going to be some frustrating elements that just kind of comes with the product. But it feels like they're maximizing the stuff that really works and kind of keeping down some of the, you know, comedy elements that are always going to be part of the show, but not taking over everything. WWE is a good product right now.
They've responded well to the surge of AEW that happened late last year. Like, they've responded in kind. They've fired back in their own way. And, yeah, it's a compelling show. I think that this is not a mark against AEW at all. I feel, if anything, it just makes this the competition between the two companies more interesting, because for a while there, and I think a lot of people were complaining that it just looked like WWE was just laying down and dying, like they were just giving up. And that is not the case, clearly.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I think this is what a lot of fans and we were hoping for and waiting for and kind of expecting it. If you remember, you know, back to 1996 and when WCW really took off in the Monday Night War and introduced the NWO, it took a while for WWE to kind of, get on track with Steve Austin, the Attitude Era, look to those, late 1996, early 1997 months, and we were getting fake Diesel and fake Razor Ramon as their response to the Outsiders, and we still had TL Hopper and a lot of stuff that just really wasn't working. And consciously or subconsciously, there was a realization somewhere along the way that we have to adjust. And it feels like maybe that's what's happening now at WWE.
Yeah, because if you look at the example that you mentioned, if you go back to that, WWE did not even really begin in their product to show signs that they were responding to WCW until about 6 months after the NWO formed.
Yeah.
That's when you start to see, they're reacting. They're trying to get more edgy. They're doing something. And then, honestly, it took another year after that before they even started to gain the edge again. So, yeah, I mean, this is the long game. These things take time, and there's going to be peaks and valleys. And, they're not letting go of their number one spot anytime soon. And if they do, it's not going to be without a hell of a fight.
Yeah, I mean, what is reassuring is that it seems like sort of people are being cast in the right role and are being played to their strengths. We don't have a lot of, square pegs being shoved in round holes where like fans don't see it all one way and Vince McMahon does. And, by God, I'm going to have my way. It feels like. And you got to be careful with this, too. I mean, I think like sort of too much fan service could be a bad thing. And you do have to kind of lead the fans and not just follow them to some extent. But it does feel like we've got the right pieces in place. We've got Roman and Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre is kind of the top challenger. I don't think anybody seriously believes he's going to beat Roman Reigns, but it's a worthwhile feud. RK Bro, way over. Usos are over. Really, like the acts that are being featured prominently are getting over, and they're the right acts to push. So that's all reassuring. Let's talk a little bit about Roman Reigns. Some news that came out earlier this week, and he already kind of had a sort of a downplayed role at the pay-per-view, part of a 6-man tag. I think the last time we recorded, that match wasn't official, and you proposed that maybe that's where they're going, is just right. Kind of an off-month pay-per-view, something like a tag team match. That's exactly what they did, sort of low stakes. And now he was at a house show over the weekend where maybe too much to say that he was saying goodbye, but he sort of made it clear that I'm not going to be around that much. And then word surfaces that he has a new deal with WWE that requires far fewer appearances. It sounds like he's not really going to be doing the house show circuit that much, and even TV appearances and pay-per-views may be a lot less frequent. I guess word is he's not going to be on the next pay-per-view, Hell in a Cell. So on one hand, I think that's great for him. I mean, I think he certainly earned it, and I'll always push for wrestlers to do what's best for them and their family. But it does put WWE in kind of a jam, especially considering he's got both world titles right now. So where do you see this going? Does it speak to the urgency of getting those titles off of him and on Cody, or what do you think?
I don't think so in that regard. Now, here's the thing. They're in a unique spot here in that they have a really long-term kind of champion here. And, they've had long-term champions, obviously, but not to the degree that he's been, not, in decades. And it's looking to continue. So, you have to kind of scramble here, and you have to make sure that you don't overexpose this guy and have him do too much. Because it's one thing if someone's a champ for 6 months, 9 months, even a year. But when you're talking about, I mean, we're going to be closing in on 2 years. You've got to really do some gymnastics here to keep this person over. And he is still incredibly over, to keep him fresh. And you can't just keep constantly doing the I'm on TV constantly, I'm defending the title on television every single month. I understand their point of view. And I also think that in a way, having him go to a part-time schedule, first of all, is inadvertently, I'm sure he's doing it out of his own self-interest and he's earned it, but it inadvertently, I think, also helps to keep him fresh and keep him usable after being on top for so long. Because keep in mind, like, we're not even really sure what he's talking about yet, because if he's talking about maybe like a Brock Lesnar schedule or something, or even maybe something a little more than that, I don't think that's going to affect the TV audience all that much, because, you know, let's say they're mainly talking house shows. They're pulling him back from house shows. Okay, maybe that might affect your house show business. I mean, he's a proven draw. But you can still have the guy on every pay-per-view potentially, or even every other one. It's just a way of keeping him viable. I mean, I think, or even if that's not the reason they're doing it, I think it continues to serve that purpose. You can absolutely get away with, and I know there's a contingency of fans that will not like it, just like they didn't like it with Lesnar, but you can absolutely get away with having him continue to be the undisputed champion, even with a part-time schedule. I don't see any problem with that at all for him.
I think that's true for a period. So, you know, we've talked about what the SummerSlam is, where you put the title on Cody. So if we're talking now, sort of mid-May to SummerSlam is the end of July this year, I think you could absolutely do that, right? I mean, you're talking a couple of months. Much beyond that, I do think, in the absence of other top stars, and you've got Cody over on Raw, but there is a drop off after that, and as long as you are touring with house shows and stuff, you do need some draws, and Raw is 3 hours every Monday night, and SmackDown's another 2 hours. You do need that main event segment.
What they could do, you know, because I thought about that too, and you know, it was the timing of unifying the titles, even though I'm a big fan of having an undisputed world champ. But what they could do then is, when he switches to that schedule, they could figure out a way to get one of those titles off of him, so that then whoever the other champion is could be the full-time champion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I still think maybe that's the way to go with Cody.
Well, here's a thought with the Cody thing. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Al. Go on.
That's fine.
No, I was going to say,
the one he's called, the one he's set his sights on is one of those two belts. It's the WWE Championship.
Right, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, so I think maybe that's the way to go.
So if they turn the angle into something like, you know what, I don't care about that Universal belt that you have. That's the new one. I want the one that my father tried to win. That's the one I'm after. And then you can even have Cody. I mean, that's heat right there. You have Cody pin Roman, actually pin him, but it's only for one title. So then you have Cody as your WWE champion. And then Roman can continue on still as the Universal champion. I mean, maybe that's the way to go.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that. But even with that, I mean, I think Cody is a big help, because you think about it, you know, whatever it is, 6 weeks ago, there wasn't even a Cody, right? So there was Roman, and then a huge drop off to whoever was sort of next in line as a top draw. I mean, you look at WrestleMania and who outside of Roman the big draws were, and it was Steve Austin and you know, Brock Lesnar and the last several main event acts, world champions they've had. When you talk about guys like Big E and stuff, and Drew. You know, the reality is that they plateaued at a level lower than you need to really carry your company. And I'd argue that Cody is maybe already above both of those. So whether that maintains, it is a little worrisome. You know, that's just sort of, I don't know that it has to be this way, but we saw it in AEW. You know, when you are that true white meat babyface, it comes with some rejection, some hostility from a certain kind of fan that you know is going to support the anti-hero. So I do worry about how long Cody can sustain this.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, that's got to be in the back of their minds. It's working very well right now. And I think, too, that could be another argument in favor of having him pin Roman, because that really does make him seem very legit. I mean, of course, you always run the risk of backlash, especially nowadays with, you know, fans being so smart or thinking they're so smart, because a lot of times, you know, when you have the face succeed to a degree that they don't want him to, they could turn on him. You know, I mean, it really is a crapshoot. It's interesting, but they have to be thinking about it, because like you said, the depth isn't there. I think Drew McIntyre, and I've also mentioned Randy Orton.
I was about to bring him up. Yeah,
they both, and I was kind of thinking that 6-man tag was a way to have them both in the picture there. They both could be credible challengers for Roman, just to kind of keep him going, but not really the type that would beat him,
Yeah. It's crazy that, Randy's celebrating his 20th year in WWE now, and, he's getting around that 40 mark and is probably as over as he's been in a long time. I mean, thanks to Riddle and this act that has really caught fire. And I think there's no denying. I mean, when I think about, well, if you don't have Roman, how do you headline house shows? And I think right now that's it. It's RK Bro. I mean, they're a hugely overact right now. You got to think eventually you split them up, but I don't think it's close to time to doing that. And it's sort of reinvigorated Randy Orton. He has said as much that he's having the best time of his career.
I know, and you can kind of tell. I mean, they work really well together, and people seem to love it. It won me over in the beginning. I was just like, "What is this? This is so lame." But it totally won me over. It's just such a funny dynamic, and just the match, the way they work their matches together. It seems like Randy always works in this spot where he flies to the outside of the ring and just kind of like knocks himself out for half the match, which is really weird. But but I think they're working very well together. Yeah, and with someone that's been around as long as Randy, this is a good spot for him to be in. You can't, you have to. He's a unique case, and you're going to see way more of these in the future now in the 21st century wrestling landscape of guys spending decades at a time. I mean, I guess The Undertaker was the first of these, without ever going anywhere and just staying in that one company for that long. I mean, that's not really, that was never the norm for anybody. You know what I mean? And so these guys, it's like uncharted territory, how they're going to be perceived,
Yeah. The other thing that's sort of reassuring right now in WWE is that they do seem to be putting some guys in the pipeline, whether it's Theory, who is still very young in his career. And I think some people will think he's a little overpushed, but I think he's been doing really good work. I think he's carried himself with some confidence and maturity. He hasn't embarrassed himself out there. And he still needs some polishing, but I think he's on his way. Even a guy like Veer Mahan, who it was sort of like this punchline for so long, those teases every week. But he's gotten over, since he gets a reaction when he gets into the ring and pummels somebody. So, I don't know exactly what the upside of those two are, and a lot of other people who are in the pipeline. You talk about Braun Breaker and guys in NXT, but it does seem, again, going back, whether this is a response to AEW consciously or subconsciously, it does seem that there is a more organization, more forethought, more kind of a long view than we've seen in WWE in some time.
Yeah, there is. And, I've long waited and hoped that there would be a champion that they would have the confidence in to really let them build up and become something special. The Attitude Era kind of gave us the era of basically these quick title changes, even with the main title. And I honestly don't think that helped a lot of people. Like, I remember the first time I really took notice of it was with Austin, because when he won it, I'm thinking, oh my God, this guy's going to hold this forever, and he didn't. Yeah. And I know part of that was his injury and that kind of thing, but it was also a fundamental booking change. And I'm not saying every champion needs to be champion for years, but now and then there should be one, quite honestly, that does stand out from the pack and holds it for more than 6 to 9 months or a year. I really do believe that.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about AEW. I had the sort of unique experience of going to Smackdown on Friday, live on Long Island, and then whatever it was, 4 or 5 days later, last night, I was at Dynamite, also on Long Island. I love these little, kind of gamesmanship going on between the two companies. It benefits fans. And so able to sort of compare and contrast the live experience. I had a really good time at both shows. Clearly, the crowds are different. One thing that I didn't really have a realization of until I was at AEW last night, you don't see kids in the crowd in AEW. It's absolutely more like 20, in some ways it skews younger because you'll see a lot of like older folks in WWE shows, but they bring their kids, and I don't see any kids, or very, very few kids at AEW shows.
Right, because I started taking my son, who's 5. I started taking him within the last, since last fall, when they really came back to doing, a full-time schedule and things. And I started realizing and thinking twice about taking him to the AEW ones. And just because I feel like, it is more of like a rowdy indie crowd, and which I'm fine with. But the WWE one, it's more like you're going to see, like, I don't know what,
Disney on Ice.
Yeah, or something like that, or just some kind of more like general entertainment thing, or the circus, let's say, Ringling Brothers. It's just a more general crowd, which I think for him is better because I could just tell he's more comfortable seeing other kids around and families and things, and not like just a bunch of screaming drunk guys. And he's more like comfortable being there. He has a better time. He kind of, the AEW shows he's not as into, and I think that's a big reason why. It's just a different vibe. It's not as much of a kid-friendly vibe, which is fine. I'm not saying it should be. I'm just stating an observation that it's not.
Yeah, I really agree, and my fans really my kids aren't really wrestling fans in general these days, but as you said, there's a comfort level, a familiarity at WWE shows, and AEW, even if the action in the ring is just like off the charts, and I took my boys to Grand Slam. You went to that also.
Yes,
Arthur
I was there.
last
Yeah.
year.
With
yeah, and
son.
I mean Daniel Bryan and Kenny Omega was just this incredible, one of the best matches I had seen all year. And my kids could not give a damn, and I just think that it's a little foreign to them. It's not as accessible, and some of that is just sort of WWE's branding over whatever it is, 40 years of family entertainment. That it resonates. But I think the AEW product is still really strong. They're coming up on one of their big shows of the year with Double or Nothing, main event CM Punk and Hangman Page for the world title. Interesting seeing Punk get booed out of the building on Long Island. It's kind of a fun dynamic whenever he's there, and MJF getting the heroes a welcome whenever he's here. But what do you think about that match? And do you think that belt's coming off of Page?
I do. I think that's. I mean, at least it seems to be the obvious move. Maybe they don't go with the obvious move, but they've been relatively patient with Punk. He's been around since September, and he's recently started doing that, kind of like hands around the waist gesture to sort of indicate, okay, I'm now interested in going for that AEW world title. Like, it's time now. And I think that's probably where they're going to be going. I mean, I like that AEW, they don't, even though, no one's held a title as long as like a Roman Reigns, but they don't rush their title changes. They give everybody a chance to sort of like see what they could do. Like, if you look, there hasn't been a ton. You had Jericho, you had Moxley, you had Omega, and now Page. So it's like, every champion gets a chance to make their mark. And I think even if Page does lose it to Punk, that is absolutely not going to be his last run with that title. I mean, he could wind up being the first 2-time AEW world champion,
Well, the issue there is, and I was talking about this yesterday at AEW, is that roster is so, I mean, I guess it's a good problem to have, but it's still sort of a problem that roster is so deep that the queue for world title, not just challengers, but potential world champions goes back pretty far now. So, watching AEW and every match that came out, you're like, oh yeah, I forgot they have this guy. And he's like a huge guy, a big star. It's like, well, that guy's got to be in the main event at some point. And then the next match comes in like, oh yeah, him, of course. And it is very, very crowded and crowded at the top. So a guy like Page, who I think is really good, but I don't think has connected on a level that some of these others have. I don't know what becomes of him once he's out of that main event picture, when you've got a Bryan Danielson, and you still got a guy like Moxley, and Kenny Omega will be back at some point, and Adam Cole, and and MJF, and so many. It's is this a problem? Is is it bad management, bad I don't know, hiring practices to have? Because I mean, here's just one example. Keith Lee was a guy who in WWE, a certain kind of fan was clamoring for more, and you saw him not do a whole lot in the main roster, and it's like, you guys don't know what you have. And Keith Lee, this guy could be like a big star for you. Goes over to AEW, everybody gets very excited, and it's not that he's doing nothing, but he is not in the pecking order. He's not near the top right now. He's in tag team program with Shane Strickland. And there's a lot of guys like that. If you talk about Malachi Black and, even a guy like Adam Cole, you'd think would be near the top in that world title mix. It's just very crowded.
Right. There's only so many spots, and that's what everybody has said. And I think that even more than people like Keith Lee, excuse me, I think it hurts people like Adam Page because he's somebody who's a homegrown talent, or at least he's perceived that way. I know he's wrestled other places, but he is, for all intents and purposes, an AEW homegrown talent, and has huge star potential, clearly has the it factor of a star wrestler you could even build a company around. But he's not as much of a proven commodity, and he runs more of a risk of getting lost in the shuffle, not as much of an opportunity to really shine on his own kind of a thing. And so, I feel like him as champion, it was one of those where the chase was much more satisfying than him as the champion. But I don't think that's his fault. I think it is like what we're talking about. It's the result of the way the roster is set up. It's almost like you've got so many great people, and this is a great problem. I don't know why I'm complaining, but it's like you got so many potential top guys that it's almost like the feeling from the fans are just like, okay, let's get to the next guy. Like, we want to see all these people in title matches or as champion. We want to see Punk as champion. We want to see Bryan as champion. We want to see Keith Lee as champion. We want to see like all these people coming in. Yeah, let them be. Samoa Joe. Yeah. Let him be the AEW
Samoa
champion.
Joe, yeah.
So it's like there's an impatience. Like, all right, Paige, you've had it long enough. All right, time for the next guy. And that is that they're not giving in. AEW in their booking, I want to stress, is not giving in to that instinct. They're not like, you're not seeing that. You're seeing patience. But I think the fan base is giving into that instinct, which is why I think people kind of seem to have gotten bored with Paige.
Yeah, I think kind of a side effect of this, and I think we talked about it in the last podcast, and it reminds me of a piece you wrote for the magazine a little while back about were they better off where they were, or are they better off in AEW? And I do think it maybe makes some people reconsider that, and especially after the Cody experiment, you wonder if the tide starts to turn and some contracts come up, and some wrestlers in AEW think again, well, it's awfully crowded near the top here, and WWE is looking for some stars, and maybe there's an opening there. And the one that people always talk about in that situation is maybe an MJF. But there are lots. I mean, when I got the roster page in front of me, and again, every line, it's like, oh yeah, they've got him too. I mean, Adam Cole, Andrade was a guy, another sort of can't miss out of WWE. God, who else is here? Brian Cage was a former world title challenger and AEW, sort of, forgotten now or lost in the mix. Bryan Danielson, Jericho, another top guy. Christian Cage, another guy who they, came over with all this name value. Punk, Darby Allin is like one of these future, the four pillars, whatever it is, of AEW. Another guy who one day he's got to be a top guy. Eddie Kingston is hugely over. Just going down the hook, early in his career, but a guy who is super over. And on and on. Jay Lethal is a top guy in Ring of Honor. Jeff Hardy, like one of the most over guys in wrestling over the last 20 years. Moxley, Jungle Boy, Keith Lee, Kenny Omega, Kyle O'Reilly, Lance Archer, and on and on and on. It's again, a good problem to have in some ways. Miro, another guy I forgot about. A good problem to have, but And maybe a problem isn't the right word, but I do think WWE, if they're smart, sees an opportunity here, and I don't know how many of these people would be a good fit there, especially ones that left WWE to go over there because they didn't see something in them. But that was Cody's situation, and you come back and you have a totally different kind of outlook, and they see you differently. But being in AEW yesterday, there was a few people. Wardlow was one. Who you think, oh God, I mean, if Vince McMahon could get his hands on this guy, he'd go nuts. Jade Cargill's another one. I mean, those people are like sort of tailor-made for Vince McMahon.
Yeah, I think you're going to start seeing more of that, and like the Cody situation. And when I say that, I don't mean that I think it's going to like turn the other direction where all of a sudden everybody's going to WWE. I think you're going to see more back and forth now, where it's going to be like, okay, you're going to take some of our guys, we're going to take some of your guys, and you're going to see as contracts come up this kind of free flow between the two companies of talent, which quite frankly I love. I mean, like we said,
I think it's really fun.
That's one of the coolest things about wrestling. I mean, it reminds you of those WWF, WCW days, or the WWF, Crockett or AWA days where you would see that. Although, like with WCW, it was more of an even back and forth, whereas with the other companies, it was more like everybody was trying to get to the WWF. But this will be more like that WWF, WCW dynamic where you're like, oh, who's going to jump next? Oh my God, I'm going to turn on Dynamite and see who. I'm going to turn on Raw. Who's going to be there? Like that's awesome. Like that's one of the most fun things about wrestling.
Yeah, and for a while, I mean, since AEW really arrived and kind of made its mark, I've been thinking, well, if a lot of the independent talent and talent from Japan and Impact and Ring of Honor, a lot of those guys are going over to, the career trajectory takes them to AEW rather than WWE. Where does WWE get their guys from? And I think one of the things that might be kind of materializing is, well, they'll get their guys from AEW, potentially. Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to make too much of the Cody example, but I do think that, right. I mean, if you're I got to talk to John Silver the other day ahead of the AEW show on Long Island, a super talented guy. I mean, clearly like big upside. But a guy like him, I mean, you've got to look around that locker room and think, how far can I go here? And not that he could go much further in WWE, but it's not just about sort of like fame or anything like that. It's also money, right? I mean, and you play one side against the other, and they all, they sweeten the deal a little bit, and maybe what you see, and maybe Cody's example of that is throughout a career, a lot of going back and forth. He spent a couple of years in this place, and then Jeff Jarrett did that for a number of years and had a great career. I mean, he was bouncing back and forth seemingly whenever his contract came up.
Well, it provides a solution. I mean, it's not a cure-all, but it provides a solution to the issue of the past 20 years, especially in the WWE situation of guys just sticking around forever and getting stale. Now there's a viable way, more than ever, more than, way more than TNA, sorry to say. There's a viable way that you can step away, stay fresh, go somewhere else where you could still make good money and have great exposure, get over there, then go back. You know what I mean? You can keep people fresh that way. It's kind of like an inadvertent side effect of this.
Yeah. So before we wrap up here, one little thing, kind of off the beaten path, but we're around the same age. I know at a certain age, I was in love with Tammy Sitch, Sunny. I mean, she was the poster girl of all poster girls in WWE, and we've seen this real tragic fall over the last several years, and sort of culminating with the news over the last few weeks that she was involved in a fatal DWI accident, and now maybe looking at some serious prison time. We've heard some voices come out since then, including Bill DeMott, saying she should be removed from WWE Hall of Fame. What do you kind of make of all this? I mean, just incredibly sad. I mean, there's not even that much that is about wrestling here, other than I imagine a lot of the vices and demons that she picked up a lot of way date back to her time in wrestling. But what do you make of her story?
Well, my understanding, I've met her a few times, but when I came to WWE, she was already gone. So this in 2000, they had kind of moved on from that era. But I'd heard a lot of the stories because it wasn't that far in the past. And the understanding that I got was that, she was wonderful. She was sweet and down to earth and very, humble and everything until the huge success came in WWF. In other words, like when she was working with Cornette and everything, and then when she, came up to WWF, and initially, she was wonderful, and then the enormity of her success seems to have, and again, I feel, bad to talk about someone this way, but seems to have gone to her head. And I heard a lot of stories of people trying to intervene with a lot of self-destructive behavior that she was engaging in even at the time she was there. So, but I have to also say that this is a situation now, we're talking years and years later, and, to be frank, there's nobody that would get as many second and third and fourth chances as her. And it seems a little unfair at this point, and it gets to the point where you have to pay the price for the things you've done. I mean, somebody died here, and this is not flukish behavior. This is a pattern of behavior, and I think that it's time that she pays the penalty for that. And I think that she needs to go to jail for this. To be totally frank, it's just wrong of her to continue to kind of skate through all this stuff. There's got to be repercussions and ramifications. That said, I see the Bill DeMott stuff, and I see there was someone else who indicated that she should be taken out of the Hall of Fame. I think that is a very slippery slope to go down, because if you do that, and trust me when I tell you this, if that's really what you want to do, you might as well get rid of the WWE Hall of Fame. Yeah. Not only based on what people have done in the past and that kind of thing, but what they may do in the future. Wrestling people do not always make the wisest decisions. I think the business attracts people like that, and sometimes rewards people like that. So you don't want, look, that's my take, is you do not want to set that precedent. It's one thing to say, like a Benoit or somebody like that, where you go, we're not going to put that person in, like a Pete Rose situation. We're not going to put them in because of X, Y, and Z. But once they're in, they're in. And you're not saying that we endorse this person. We think that this person is Mother Teresa, and they're Gandhi, and they're the greatest person ever. No. But they were inducted in the Hall of Fame, and that's permanent. They're in the Hall of Fame, because then, you know what? You take Hogan out, take Jimmy Snuka out, I could make you a nice long list of people that would and should come out if you're going to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you also have to distinguish between the WWE Hall of Fame and other Hall of Fames, in that, and I dig the Hall of Fame, and I think it's a nice moment and a nice honor for a lot of people, but it is less a legitimate Hall of Fame in the way people are inducted than other Hall of Fames. There's no voting or anything like that. It's a WWE kind of marketing tool. Yeah, I mean, it just seems sort of like specious to even talk. Who cares if she's in it or not? I mean, I get that. I don't know if it comes with some kind of compensation, just being in the Hall of Fame. Beyond, I don't think there is, beyond whatever you got that weekend, and if maybe there's some kind of merchandise deal. It is a different question, I suppose, whether WWE should be in any kind of business with Tammy Sytch going forward. But that she is in this Hall of Fame, it just seems sort of inconsequential in the big picture. I think we've talked about Dave Meltzer put it up for a vote, right, whether or not to remove Benoit from the Hall of Fame, and that's a different kind of situation where that is a Hall of Fame that is more legitimate and is voted on, all that.
And they voted to leave him in.
Yeah, which I get. I mean, it is always tricky, kind of having that hindsight and dissecting somebody's life.
I just think, and this is a bigger social issue, that I think very often there's a loss of perspective, and I don't know if it's a result of social media or the inability to hold two truths simultaneously. It's like this idea of, yes, this person is a Hall of Famer at their chosen trade. This person is also a piece of garbage. Like those two things can exist.
They kind of have to.
I don't have an issue with that at all.
Yeah. It is, and not go too deeply in things that aren't wrestling related, but the one that, and I might have even mentioned this here, but there's a Broadway show honoring Michael Jackson right now that I'm really interested to see, because I was a fan of Michael Jackson's music. I grew up in the 80s, and I thought as an artist, as a performer, as a songwriter, as a dancer, I mean, the guy was on a different level, one of the greatest we've seen of all time.
Absolutely.
And I understand, never convicted of any crime, but clearly there is a lot of evidence and things that have been established that should at least raise serious concerns about what he was doing in his personal life. And you could be appalled by that, and should be. I mean, not to again convict somebody who hasn't been convicted or anything, but as far as what the allegations were, they are awful, if true. And you can listen to Man in the Mirror and think this is a fantastic song, but it's tricky. I don't know that there is an answer. I was just popped in an old VHS tape the other day, and it was from the Shotgun Saturday Night, that first run where they were doing all the bars and clubs, and Sunny was really prominently featured. That was kind of like the heyday of Sunny, and she was really something special, and
yes.
Never a wrestler, obviously. So this was a different time. This is sort of pre-diva. She was kind of the only diva. Maybe some people say she's sort of like the founder of the divas, because remember, women in large part, but before Sunny, you had Moolah, you had Rockin' Robin, you had Wendy Richter.
Well, also Elizabeth, that type of.
Yes,
figure.
Elizabeth was probably of the closest comparison, but she was sort of meek and quiet, where Sunny was really bombastic and kind of outsized, and just was so good in that role. So, as far as merit, she does, her role in wrestling does warrant a place in the Hall of Fame. But what an incredibly tragic figure since then. I mean, in some ways, the closest thing to Mickey Rourke's character in The Wrestler as anybody. I mean, just I don't know what she's living like now, but it's got to, that's got to be one of the more epic falls from grace that we've seen in wrestling, and that covers a lot of ground.
Yeah, because she is one of the truly groundbreaking figures. I mean, that gets thrown a lot with a lot of people, but I think what we're trying to put our finger on here is she was the beginning. I would say not even in just WWE, but in wrestling, of the concept of having a female persona, particularly one who's not a wrestler, let's say. Just the idea of a woman that could be a major part of the product, like a needle mover, like a ratings getter, like a ticket seller, just based on being there, just based on sex appeal and personality. And, that was very unique, being, and then leading to Sable, who's doing she's doing Austin and Rock numbers in the ratings, that kind of thing. Sunny began that phenomenon, and then you see the divas following afterwards after that. But it was one of those things of where they never, I don't think they ever, it's almost like what happened to Russo himself, who was, somebody who helped Sunny get to that spot, but they never wanted somebody else to be able to get that big. And I think because of the pitfalls of it, which is, I think, also why a lot of the divas felt held back or suffered, or felt like, a lot of fans for a long time were going, well, where's the next Sunny or Sable? And this seems to be more of kind of an equal cast of characters. Maybe there was Trish, but I think that was a very conscious move on their part, that they didn't want to create another Sunny or Sable,
Yeah. Just an incredibly sad story. I mean, I had mentioned something in my column about her, and it was before this most recent arrest, because it's not even her first of the year, I don't believe.
Right. No.
I think you might be getting into double digits of these drunk driving arrests. And I mean, there's a whole other conversation to be had about what that says about the legal system, that somebody like that could have still been operating a vehicle, and just frustrating. I'm sure incredibly sad for the family of the gentleman who was lost in that accident. Just terribly sad all around. And I guess, she's going to have to reckon with this. Just a sad story. Anyhow, Brian, before we sign off, you've got some news on your book, right?
I do, yeah, because, I know there was some frustration because, of course, it came out on April 12th, Blood and Fire, the unbelievable real-life story of wrestling's original Sheik. And it sold out on Amazon immediately on day one. And I think, that sounds cool and amazing, but I think it's also a supply chain issue, where I don't think Amazon had enough in stock. And now finally, a month later, they have gotten their act together. And I'm proud to say that people that want to buy a physical copy of the book, because, the digital copies are always available for sale. But if you wanted a physical copy you can hold in your hand, and Amazon is the world's largest retailer, the easiest way to get it, you can now go to Amazon.com and order the book. So that's exciting because now I can get back to trouncing John Moxley in the book rankings on Amazon. And I'm sure he's wondering just who the hell I am because we keep trading like the 1 and 2 spots back and forth. So that's fun.
We need a GCW death match between the two of you to settle this once and for all. Anyhow, thank you, Brian, as always, and thanks to everybody listening. Right now, let's listen to Candace Cordelia's interview with a couple of stars from Major League Wrestling. It is the Clout Couple, Alicia Atout and Richard Holliday.
First and foremost, Alicia's like, yes. First and foremost, how are you both doing today?
I'm doing well, things are going pretty well over here. I miss my babe over there, but of course we're both traveling right now, but yeah, I can't complain.
Yes. How about you, Richard?
Yeah, she said it perfectly. With the travel and everything, making the relationship work is tough, but we do it. And of course I miss her, but I'm doing fantastic.
Excellent. How is it with long distance for you both? Understandably in this business, traveling is a huge part of it. And I'm sure our fans would love to know exactly how you both make it work, both going to different places. Even when you're both together at MLW, you have your own things going on. So how do you make this work for both of you?
Oddly enough, I think that it works beautifully, right? And I actually think that it actually makes the relationship even better. She is such an incredible woman on her own. And then myself on my own, we have so much going on. We're so incredibly busy that when we do finally get to come together, it's even better, right? And our relationship, even more fire behind it. And, we understand each other's lives. We understand what we're both trying to do. She has her things that she's accomplishing, and so do I. And I think that's part of the reason why we're so attracted to each other.
You said it perfectly, babe. It's one of those things too, where when you're in wrestling, you're constantly on the go, and it's so hard to talk with somebody who doesn't understand that, whether it's the hustle of it, being in different cities, just traveling constantly. So it's kind of like we're already on that same page. There's no explaining. We both understand. So that really does just add an extra layer of it being just very simple.
I love that. That's beautiful. And, you're both on the same page for a lot of different things, particularly this feud that we have. I don't even want to say brewing. It's pretty much at full tilt between yourself, Richard Holliday, and yourself, Alicia Atout, and Hammerstone, Alex Hammerstone. And we're going to see this come to a full-on head May 13th at MLW Coliseum. But, we have to go back into the history, which is really rich. And the fans of MLW, they've been following this for quite some time. We're no strangers to the dynasty. Richard, you were former friends, best friends with Alex Hammerstone, and now obviously that's no longer. So talk to us, you both, first of all, because this all came to a screeching halt, this friendship at the top of 2022. What exactly happened? Why at that point did you feel it was necessary to turn on your former best friend?
I really don't look at it as like turning on a friend, because if you really take a look at it, he really wasn't that good of a friend to me. I was the one who was doing all of the quote unquote friendly things within our relationship. He was selfish. He was self-imposed, and he would never have my back. Like, I always had his back. He would always take a look back. Like, anytime he needed help, I was there. Anytime, people were ganging up on him, I was there to have his back, to clear the way. he was fine. And then, of course, he went on to become the heavyweight champion, do all these great things, but like no notoriety. Not that I like wanted the notoriety, but like no pats on the back, nothing from him. Like he didn't give anything back. There was no reciprocation. And, he just did this cute little soliloquy that he put out there of our relationship and how much it meant to him and how he called me, with contracts. He called me when his girlfriend had cancer, and he called me, when he won the title, I was the first one there. And all those things are true. It's very, very true things. But like when it really came down to like being a friend for me, he just wasn't there. So I dumped his ass.
That's very interesting. Alicia, your thoughts? I saw you nodding your head. You're like, yes.
Yeah. I mean, you guys only saw everything that was, shown on MLW. There are so many different layers behind the scenes of where Richard went out of his way to be such a good friend to Alex, and the disrespect back constantly. That's where I've just had enough. When you care about somebody the way that I care about him and see someone treat someone like that, you just have enough at some point. So it just got to the point where it was ridiculous.
Thank you both for clarifying, because a lot of fans have wondered exactly when this first started. And of course, there are many things that we don't see that are happening behind the scenes. I know, for example, when Hammerstone won in October, the World Heavyweight Championship, a lot of fans have been wondering if you, Richard, were in fact jealous of that win and perhaps felt some type of way. I don't know what your thoughts about that are.
No, I don't like when people like perceive me or like try to like have this representation of what I am. Like jealous? No. Like why would I be jealous? Like I was the first one through the curtain to congratulate him when he won the championship. I mean, that's for real. Like I hope that there was cameras there to pick up that moment. Like that's 100% the truth. But jealous? Absolutely not. I don't get jealous of people like Hammerstone. I mean, he has no qualities about himself that would make me say, I wish that was me, or I wish I had that. I mean, like look at it from like an intelligence perspective. The guy dropped out of high school, so he has no education. Then look at it from a style perspective. He comes to the arenas in a stringer tee and slides. So yeah, I mean, why would I envy him? I was happy for him. I was like, wow, this guy who really should achieve nothing has achieved the highest thing to do in our business. So, good for him. I was happy. Jealous? No, absolutely not. But now I'm like, you just don't really deserve that the way I deserve that. So I'm going to take it from you, pal. I'm happy the time you did.
Wow. Alicia, very recently, and I was very intrigued by this development, this whole lawsuit that's happening. Can you please confirm if this is indeed a thing? You're actually thinking of suing, I believe, MLW, because they are pretty much telling you can't have or do any interviews. Further, I can already see you have thoughts. This is
I was advised to not speak much on the subject, but what I can say is at this point in time, I don't feel the need to interview. So, they can kind of threaten me with what they want. That is how I'm viewing this, but I don't care. I don't give a damn about what's on the table. I'm going to handle my business like I always do. And I'm just going to continue to thrive otherwise, because at this point, I don't need the interviews.
Your fans have grown up watching you do interviews and making your claim, you're staking your claim in MLW, and now you're in your Bay's corner and you're really helping him out right now. I mean, how do you feel about this new turn of events for you and this new thing that you're really cultivating for yourself in MLW in terms of a career?
Absolutely love it. Because not only do I get to be by his side, literally have the closest front row seat every time he's in the ring, which I absolutely love. But it's also just been wonderful because at this point, I don't have to continue to follow the rules. I don't have to sit by the sidelines and just listen to all of the BS. I can kind of pave my own path with this whole thing. And that has been absolutely incredible. No one's going to stop either of us from saying what we want, from doing what we want in MLW. And I think if they just keep eyes on that, they're going to realize that real quick.
We started this interview off talking about long distance and making the relationship work and all of that great stuff. What do you foresee for both of you going forward after Colosseum? Of course, I'm sure for you both, you want the win and then you're going to go off to glory. But what do you foresee for yourself after that, should that happen on May 13th?
Well, May 13th is a monumental day, not just in my life or Alicia's life, but MLW's life, in the world of professional wrestling. It's a huge day. The media attention that this event is garnering is really because of myself and Alicia, and how much we are driving the perception of this event. With that being said, when I win the heavyweight championship and Alicia comes in the ring and we have that passionate kiss like we do, trust me, we are going to leave Philadelphia as quickly as we possibly can. And we are going to celebrate the way that we only can, the way that the Clout Couple only could.
And you're speaking of my hometown. Philly is my hometown. And I know, judging from other shows that I've been to at the 2300 Arena, it's going to be one that I think a lot of fans will never forget. I think we're in for some shocks and some waves. But another thing that I would love to know is, what do you do? What does the Clout Couple do? What's a day in the life of the Clout Couple when you are together?
I think the most obvious thing is any time that we get to explore a city together, especially for the first time, he always needs to hit up his coffee shops. It's to the point where when we first start going on our initial dates, I couldn't believe how many different shops he'd want to hit up. I'm like, okay, yeah, we can do one. He's like, no, I literally have a list of 3. They're within 10 minutes of each other. So that's always something that we have to do for sure.
Yeah, and Alicia doesn't really love coffee all too much, but she does get the hot chocolate wherever they are available. And there have been some really lovely artisan hot chocolates that she has got.
There have been. Yeah, I've discovered some really good stuff.
That's interesting. You know, I recently saw a tweet that you wrote out, Alicia. You were like, what is this man turning me into? Because you were saying, oh, I'm getting an iced coffee. What is happening?
I know. I was like, if you would have told me I was doing this a couple of years back, you'd be like, who the hell are you? But look at me now, the positive effects of being in this kind of relationship.
Exactly. And, Richard, the last time that we talked, we both saw each other in person back in October, we talked about your coffee range and your own entrepreneurial pursuits. How's that been going since then?
Oh, man, it's thriving. Yeah, it's excellent. I get consumers almost daily, direct messaging me or messaging me on Twitter or Instagram, wherever the case may be. Just let me know how great the blend is, that they're repeat customers. They keep going on and buying. So the residual business has been great. The brand is growing. It's awesome. I mean, it's fantastic coffee. Have you tried it yet?
I have not, because no one sent me any. So what is happening? You're supposed to send me some, Richard. We gotta get it. Alicia's like, what's good?
I'll see what I can do.
Yes, please. A little sample would be excellent. I never was a big coffee person, but over the past few years, I myself have definitely started to partake in it. And it's not an addiction, but, I'm not going to sit here and say I don't have a cup every now and then on a weekly basis. So, yes, I'd love to have a taste. What about you, Alicia? Do you think you're going to get into the family business with this coffee range Richard has going?
Oh, I mean, anything that he does, I'm always behind. So whatever help he needs, I am absolutely there. Anything that he's passionate about, it's my job. And I just love absolutely being able to go right in there. So, I think, why wouldn't I, right?
Exactly. And what about wrestling for you? Because this is something, Alicia, that you and I kind of talked about the last time we also met in October. And you stated how you were in pain and you were bruised. And I didn't know if that was something you wanted to do.
I messed myself up.
So what are your thoughts now? It's been some months have passed and we see what you're doing with Richard, and a lot of fans want to know still if that's something you would like to delve into.
Every time that I'm in Orlando filming the Worsties stuff, I'm always in the ring, always trying to kind of brush up on that stuff. But by no means am I in there training constantly kind of ready for a match. However, I have felt this weird drive and had these random kind of daydreams where I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be pretty badass if the Clout Couple could actually go in there and just destroy everybody? So part of me would love to put that effort in right now. There's a lot going on, but you never know. At this point, I always say you never know.
Who would be someone that you would love to face in the ring, should that become a possibility?
Oh, man. I don't know. I have to think about that for a second. Does anyone come to mind for you, babe?
The idea of Alicia getting in the ring is, I'm very, it's a double-sided coin for me. Like on one side of the coin, I I don't want to see anything happen to her. You know, there's so much training that goes involved into it. Not that she can't do it because she's so accomplished and everything else that she does. If she sets her mind to it, I have no doubt that she'll be able to do it. But you do have to put in the time and, you know, and effort in order to be safe in the ring. Then the other side, I'm like, man, that would be super hot if she's in there with me. So
that'd be so cool.
I don't know.
We'll see.
It's kind of one of the flip of the coin type scenarios. But in terms of opponents or anything like that, who really cares? That's all wish-wash. That doesn't really matter. That's for the consumers to speculate. You know, hey, I'd love to see that. Stars don't do that. You know, we just get in the ring, and whoever's across from us is across from us.
Absolutely. I love that response. Very diplomatic, but also, you know, you bet on yourself. You have to bet on yourself, bet on your partner, and it is what it is. So, Alicia, you did also mention worsties. I see this becoming more of something that you're really dedicating a lot of your time, or not a lot of your time, but a good amount of your time to. So talk to us more about this, because I saw there's some podcast action happening and a lot of really special things that you're preparing for your fans.
Yeah, it's my feud with Selena De La Renta. She has weirdly become my worst best friend in this entire universe, which is a very bizarre dynamic. But right now, we're just always doing exclusive content. We've been focusing heavily on doing these video game segments called Video Games Not for Dummies, where we duel. Whoever loses the video game has to do a horrible punishment. So I feel like those have really actually been toughening me up as of late, because they can be brutal, but it's a good time. So we are just continuing to post a lot of exclusive goodies. And we actually have a trip coming up where Richard will be involved that we're really excited about, where we're going to be filming a lot of exclusive stuff. So yeah, we just have a ball, you know. We're kind of badasses. We're a little bit goofball, and that combination can be deadly sometimes.
Very interesting. We can't wait to see what comes next. And of course, what comes next is May 13th. It's right around the corner. We can't wait to see what happens between yourself, Richard, and Alex Hammerstone. Do you have anything that you'd like to say to Alex? Because I have a feeling he will be watching this. He is watching your every move, even if he might not.
He's obsessed.
I'm sure he's watching. So what would you like to say to him at this moment?
I have nothing to say to him. I really don't. You know, there's no words that I can put out there that's going to get through his thick skull anyway. So it's all about the actions. It's all about what's going to take place on May 13th. And you know what? Part of me thinks that, like, he's going to get in the ring and this is going to be like some sort of cakewalk for him. I really feel like he's like looking past who I am and what I'm going to do when I get in the ring. He should know firsthand, you know, when we team together as the Dynasty, you know, he's such a forward thinker in that sense that he doesn't really live in the present moment. And in that moment on May 13th, when it's me and him, the bell's going to ring. You know, he, like I said in his little soliloquy, he tried to get right in the camera and try and threaten and intimidate me. You don't intimidate me, Alex. I know everything about you inside and out. I know your weaknesses, your intellectual weaknesses, your physical weaknesses. I know them all. I'm too cerebral for you. I'm too smart for you. So, well, you know what? There, I did just have some words for him. You went me, you went on a tangent. Didn't do that, but I did. So those are my closing remarks. And then, you know, from a consumer perspective, come to the 2300 Arena on May 13th and you will witness history.
Indeed. Anything you'd like to add, Alicia?
I feel like he just perfectly covered it. It's going to be one hell of not just a match, but a fight. And I know who's going to be coming out with that gold.
Well, we cannot wait to see what happens next. May 13th, everyone, MLW. If you are in the Philadelphia area, you want to go to the 2300 Arena. It's in South Philly. Check it out. I know that you're not going to want to miss this one, and I can't wait. It's going to be one for the ages. Is there anything else you both would like to add? Anything you'd like to plug, pitch? The floor is yours.
Alicia, go.
Okay. The shameless self-plug. You guys just go to Google, Alicia Atout, search it up. You can find all of my socials, which are at Alicia Atout, my merch store, where I have everything from pins to photographs to video calls, everything and above. Of course, follow the worsties, as we are always coming out with crazy content. And MLW airs at 8 p.m. Eastern every single Thursday, where you can watch the only thing that matters, the Clout Couple.
Well said.